Welcome to Make a Path Presents, where we talk about everything that has to do with the world of The Walking Dead. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk Afterthoughts for The Walking Dead Season 6 finale. Alright guys, usually I like to do these afterthought videos a few days after the episode airs, but because I was so disappointed with the cliffhanger, I wanted to wait a few weeks and come back to it again with fresh eyes, just so I didn't let my disappointment bring down the whole episode, because I actually liked it. I really liked it. I would have rated this episode as a high good. It was well acted, it fit without being forced, it was very interesting and telling. However, it was simple. Slightly underwhelmingly simple for a season finale. We have a showdown with Morgan and the Savior who really wounded Carol, and a hint of new characters and story from maybe a new community. And then we have Rick and the RV group avoiding multiple roadblocks until they're finally caught. Very simple stuff. Yet something stuck out in watching this after a few weeks has gone by. It was a gut punch of realization that it was not the cliffhanger that disappointed me. It was the entire Negan scene, which we're going to discuss in full detail when we get to it. But before we start, let me be very clear. I still like the casting, and I find Jeffrey Dean Morgan to be very charismatic. My disappointment is not because I think the Negan scene was bad. It's just that I think it was good when it could have been fucking outstanding. Before we get into Negan though, let's talk about Morgan and Carol. It turns out that all of Carol and Morgan's Season 6 story would end up leading them into a new and hopefully fresh Season 7 storyline. Interesting things to note about their story in this episode was the cool similarities between Morgan filling a wounded Carol in on things she missed because she left, kind of like how in Season 1, Morgan had to fill in a wounded Rick Grimes into what this new world has become. I know it's a stretch, but it was what I thought of while watching this, and I like little shit like that. Next, look at the picture behind Morgan. It looks like a castle, and that could be kind of an Easter egg because the new community we think they're gonna go to is called the Kingdom from the comic book. Get it? Castle, Kingdom, and never mind. To the left of him is a whole bookcase, and interestingly enough, the only book that has a visible title is called Payback. Is that a coincidence? Maybe. Now, the one con here is Carol, wounded and on foot. She gets so far ahead of Morgan when he's on a fucking horse. It's still cool to see the ruins of the now exterminated community, though. The man that had the X sprayed on his chest and hung was the last survivor of that library community Morgan and Carol were just at. The one who fired the first shot was hung, which is not only important in fleshing out this larger world that Jesus was talking about, but it's also to show us why the Saviors failed recently against Rick and gang. They were busy and distracted the last few days or maybe even weeks dealing with this community. The non-compliance at first, then the one firing the shot was hung. They made an example out of him, but they still didn't listen and they wanted to fight the Saviors. Could this also tie into the bodies that Rick and Morgan discovered in the previous episode? Were the people at the library working with the new community that we call the Kingdom, the one that we think Morgan and Carol's gonna go to, because they were conveniently close? Think about it. The guy lost his horse near where Rick and Morgan were with the bodies with the throats slit. Then Morgan ends up finding that horse between that area and the library, and then later when they leave the library, they end up finding that guy. So he's in the same area that he lost his horse in. That happens to be the same area, close enough, between the library and what was going on there, and the area where the people had their throats slit. I think there's something very interesting here that not a lot of fans are talking about. Anyway, we got Morgan. He finds a dead body with an X on the ground, like the X that was on the guy's chest. Don't forget that. That's another thing a lot of fans aren't talking about. I think we're going to see more X's coming in Season 7. Now, it looks like this dead body had his head bashed in with a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. Maybe, maybe not, but I think it does. Maybe he is the first victim victim that set off this resistance against the saviors. Anyway, Morgan finds the rosary here, and I think this actually shows something very interesting. I think this shows that the guy who was hunting Carol held on to her rosary as kind of like a motivational reminder that he's gonna get that bitch. And then we see it on the ground, or Morgan finds it on the ground. I think that's to show us that the guy spotted Carol and he no longer needed the reminder, so he just tossed the rosary on the ground and he went ahead and circled around the buildings and tackled her, and finally getting his revenge. Now Morgan shows up and he doesn't even hesitate. He gives the savior an out though. He does do that, which he doesn't accept, and Morgan, having no other options, no other choice, and he can't waste another second thinking about it, he must put the guy down, and he does it. And immediately after, we see these new people from the community called the Kingdom from the comic books, which we will do discussion videos on, so if you're new, stick around for those. Alright, so this is all underwhelming, right, for a season finale? But what I find very interesting is how this started. In the previous episode, Carol guns down a truckload of saviors. Now, these saviors were on their way to Alexandria, but why? Were they going there to just watch? Proving and showing how the saviors knew to wait at the roadblocks, or maybe they were supposed to get Alexandria to go to the hilltop, or maybe there really is a snitch at Alexandria, because otherwise it's very hard to explain how the hell they did all this just using walkie-talkies and watching them from the woods. Now, the roadblocks. Some fans didn't like this part of the story and they felt it was repetitive, but I loved it. First off, it's very important to note everyone who goes into the RV goes willingly. Some even have to tell Rick that he's not stopping them. Abraham, Sasha, Eugene, Aaron. Aaron even went as far as saying, Rick, you're gonna have to do more than punch me in the face to get me not to go. Maggie, she's sick as a dog. She's going, and going willingly. Carl wants to go because he says he owes them. Now, Aaron says he owes Maggie, and I believe that has to relate to their story in episode 4, but when Carl is saying he owes them, I truly believe it's because Denise saved Carl's life, and the saviors killed Denise. So I think that is where Carl's rage lies. He wants payback. So the first roadblock shows Rick at 100% confident level. He even gets out of the RV with zero fucks, and he has a cocky conversation with the saviors that leads to the last day on Earth conversation. Roadblock number 2 shows Rick's confidence still intact, and it shows that he's patient with handling the saviors. Now roadblock number 3 is the Walker fence. Here is where Rick's confidence starts to crack. Not wanting to risk the RV, they get out and they discover Daryl's crossbow bolts and Michonne's hair. After they get away, the thoughts of their people captured and the troubles currently on the road make Rick nervous, and that weakens his confidence. Then at roadblock 4, his confidence weakens even more, but he looks to the bullet holes in the RV, which I think is a wonderful touch, and it might mean something different, but I think he's remembering back to when he was stuck in a bad situation just recently, but he made it out of that one. So maybe, just maybe, they can make it out of this one. Now, roadblock 5 is where the logs are blocking the road, and the prisoner that they took from roadblock number 1 is thrown over and hung off the bridge with an X on his chest, possibly symbolizing this is the end of the line. It really doesn't matter at this point what plan they make next, because this is it. They're already trapped. They just don't know it yet. Now, roadblock number 6 is where they're carrying Maggie on foot and they get surrounded and you hear all that whistling. Now, for me, this was a A++++. Everything leading up to this moment was beautifully crafted. And as a comic book fan, I embrace and love the way they remixed this. See, in the comic, they were simply sleeping on the side of the road on their way to the hilltop. Now, sure, it fits the comic book and that's fine. But for TV, it was remixed beautifully. And here is where my problems begin. Now, before I start, I still 100% support Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I also believe that some moments during his scene was a 10 out of 10 performance. but other parts were just damn near close to being cringeworthy. Such a high and low mixture from his performance could actually be from forcing Negan into the finale, maybe even lacking enough time needed to prepare for the performance. And keep in mind, they were filming this censored for TV and uncensored for the Blu-ray. And another noticeable issue is how the dialogue is written compared to how it was performed. Some of it is as if it was written to sound like a jolly, psychotic Santa Claus, as if the first appearance of Negan contradicted the seriousness and tension of the trap they created. Towards the end of Negan's lecture, we realize they're fucked. Kind of like a false sense of security in a way. I mean, you would think, both the characters and the audience, you would think they're in some sort of trouble, but then they would think, okay, this guy's, maybe it's not so bad. Holy shit, it's really bad. I feel like the scene was crafted to kind of play that duality, some conflict there between some of the humor, some of the charisma, and then some of the violence and terror, and play into the oh shit realization that one of them is definitely going to die. Now let me just say, if this story was truly about the end of Rick Grimes' confidence, then it would have ended with him getting on his knees. Not with a gimmicky point of view ending with horrible fake blood dripping down. And the episode doesn't just end with a point of view shot, it also opens up with a point of view shot. 5 actually in total, 5 that play a few seconds each before the death point of view. Now the first one, we hear whistling, we see a little bit of light, and this mesh fence of some kind. Now no people are visible, and I think you can hear the Negan theme playing along too. Now the second point of view has undistinct talking. You can now see holes that are visible, but there's still no people. And the third point of view in the van is pretty much the same as the first two, but now we can see a little better. Now we can see somebody's fingers. Maybe it's Daryl, most likely Daryl. In the fourth point of view, we see Daryl's head. Now I'm assuming this is all Daryl because Daryl's the one by the doors. Michonne is behind him and right next to him. Rosita is behind her, and Glenn comes out last. The fifth and final point of view is inside the van, and it's still. It's not shaky like the ones before it, and it seems to reveal that the point of view is not actually any character inside the van, because the point of view is apparently behind the mesh fence thing that separates the front compartment of the van from the back of the van. And if this is true, then the point of view doesn't mean shit when it comes to using it to predict who dies by linking the point of views. So that would mean what they're going for is, imagine the cameraman sitting in the front seat, peering through whatever little mesh fence setup they have in the van, peering through that, looking into the back of the van. Keep in mind too, if you look at the point of view together, it's poorly done if you're focusing on continuity, because Michonne is next to Daryl. She is right next to Daryl, yet not seen in the point of view shots. It can't be Michonne, though, having the point of view shot, because she is right next to Daryl. She's not in the back of the van. She is literally inches away from Daryl, almost like hugged up next to him. And the point of view is perfectly in the middle of the van, and in my opinion, it's a bit impressionistic. And it's like the Inny Mini Miny Mo scene with Negan, which is going to be discussed in a video coming behind this one. But anyway, I can't help but feel that Negan's appearance in this episode is a call that was made by a corporate team and not a creative one. Since the end of Season 5 and going right into Season 6, we have gotten hot and cold yes and no responses about Negan being in the finale. Even Gimple came right out and said in the beginning of Season 6 he was not sure yet that they would even make it to Negan, but he guarantees that Negan's presence would definitely be felt in this coming season, meaning the saviors are definitely going to be in this season. We're gonna get all that, but they weren't sure yet if Negan himself would be making an appearance. So if you combine that with the last minute casting of Jeffrey Dean Morgan, so last minute in fact it's been confirmed that he had a beard while filming because of prior obligations to another show that he was also filming. Now keep in mind, last-minute castings are very common in The Walking Dead. It's very common in Hollywood shit for TV shows. I mean, we hear it all the time that actors that were cast in The Walking Dead are cast 1 week and 2 weeks later they're on set filming. But I disagree with doing this for a character like Negan. Such a big character like this, it's just flat out wrong to cast him so close to filming. I would have given the actor plenty of time to properly prepare for that role and maybe to even pack on some weight needed for that role. This Negan did not look intimidating. In closing, I love Season 6. It's one of, if not my most favorite season to date. But the iconic comic book villain just did not live up to the hype. The beard is a fail, not because I'm a comic purist. It's because every single aspect of Negan was purposefully kept the same as the comic, except the beard, because it was forced into the finale. And he didn't even have time to bulk up a little. He's scrawny. He's like a crackhead version of Negan. And this also could have been corrected with some well-placed camera angles, but they didn't even bother to do that. Which means that Jeffrey Dean Morgan can't even bulk up in Season 7 if he wanted to, because the continuity would be ass-fucked. Mother dick. And I am no longer worried about them rebuilding the momentum for Season 7, because nothing they do in Season 7 can make the ending of Season 6 any better. Although I'm being very harsh here, please do not forget, I still enjoy the hell out of the show, and I love the cast, love the crew, and I like this episode, but that's the problem. I like it when I should be loving it, and that is not my fault. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions below. Please take it easy on that dislike button. I'm done talking, it's your turn. Subscribe now.